Hence, I hope you have understood the concepts like epistemology, ontology, axiology, metaphysics, physics, and in case you have not understood it, it's okay because that is required for the students of philosophy. But if we normally in political philosophy, we use these words. So now let us start with the pre-Socratic thoughts, and I will start with the thoughts of sophists. You will also have to keep in mind the major debates: materialism versus realism, foundationalism versus relativism, idealism versus realism. So as some students are finding the problem, I am explaining again. Foundational means there are some fundamental principles. You believe in something fundamental, and when you believe that there is no fundamental, the opposite of foundationalism will be relativism. Relative hai, particularism. So best example is Newton and Einstein. Newton has given the universal law of gravity as a foundational principle, and Einstein has given the concept of relativity. Fine. And then idealism versus materialism. That here the example is Plato and Marx, because Marx believes matter is real, Plato believes idea is real. This is the conception of reality. Conception of reality. Fine. And when we use idealism versus realism, the best example to remember is Gandhi and Machiavelli, because for them, for Gandhi, politics should be ethics. For Machiavelli, politics is power. So realism is a power view of politics. Fine. So I hope it is clear. And now let us understand the pre-Socratic thoughts. So, in the pre-Socratic thoughts, one major division is between the physicists who were studying the physical property of universe. In physicists, you have Thales, Heraclitus, Parmenides, and when you reach to Pythagoras, we see some metaphysical elements also emerging. Now, these are the scholars who are studying the physical part of the universe. After that, there are the scholars who held that this is not an important question. This question is not important. Fine. And which is the more important question? The more important question is not how nature operates, what are its property, but how man should lead his life. So the more important question is how man should lead his life. Fine. So another branch of philosophy emerged, and that branch of philosophy dealing with what is a good life is called as ethics. What exactly is ethics? Ethics is a branch of philosophy. Ethics is a branch of philosophy that deals with the question of good. Fine. Or you can say the question of good life. So from physics we are entering into ethics, and ethics means understanding what is good life. Now to understand the good life, fine, you must have the knowledge of good life. Is this clear? To understand, ethics is about good life. So we should have the knowledge of good life. If fine. So what we will see, the two schools of knowledge. One school of knowledge will be represented by the sophists. The other school of knowledge will be represented by Socrates. Okay? So again, be patient and try to understand that the purpose of ethics is the question of good life. So we have to first understand which life is a good life. And the perception of a good life may vary. For example, if I say, I give an example of an honest officer and a corrupt officer. Now the corrupt officer has lot of wealth. Fine. Whereas honest officer does not have lot of wealth, but he has lot of peace and satisfaction. Now the choice is yours. which life is a better life? Some people believe that the life of wealth is much better. That is a definition of good life. Some will say that if a wealth is earned by unfair means, that cannot be a good life because the soul of such person can never be at peace. So the conception of good vary. So all of you, please think about your conception of good life. Write a paragraph on it. The way we discussed how you look at Gandhi, the way we discussed what is wisdom, similarly today you should write a paragraph on what is a good life, and in the discussion you tell me what is a good life according to you in terms of the theme or in 1 or 2 lines. Think about the good life. Fine. So the question of good can vary. So we should have knowledge of good life. What we are seeing here, transition, the intellectual curiosity and the thinking is moving from the world of nature to the world of humans. And this is the point when ethics arises. And some philosophers believed that let us think more about what constitutes a good life rather than what are the features or the elemental qualities of nature. So from here, we are also shifting away from the natural science into the social science. Okay? So now, I will explain about the sophists and their conception of good life. So I will go slow and you can write side by side the key points. So, sophist conception of good life, and we will have to evaluate whether our conception of good life comes near to the sophists or it comes near to the Socrates conception of good life. Fine. And actually the word sophists come from the word Sophia. Sophia also means knowledge and or wisdom. And you also understand that the concept of wisdom and good life is also connected. Fine? Because the example I gave you, the life of which officer is a good life, and your ability to make judgment on that will also depend upon how much wisdom you have. Fine? So I am not giving any judgment, I am leaving the judgment on the wisdom. And the idea of wisdom is also linked to the idea of good. Okay? So, in your copies, I hope you have written the sophists were Sophia. So first of all, write who were sophists. Right? Who were sophists? Fine? Right? sophists were the teachers. Sophists were the teachers. Who were sophists? Sophists were the teachers. Okay. So, sophists were the teachers. Fine. Now, what is so special about them as a teacher? Fine. So, we can say that they were the first professional teachers. So, sophists were the first professional teachers. Who were sophists? So, sophists were the teachers. And which type of teachers? The first professional teachers. Okay. I am repeating, who were sophists, right? Sophists were the teachers. And what is so special about it? They were the first professional teachers. Okay. Now in your copy you write, what does it mean? Right. What does it mean? What does it mean when we say the sophists were professional teachers? So, professional teachers means teaching was their profession. Fine. So, teaching was not their passion. Teaching was not their duty. Teaching was their profession. Profession means earning money out of it. So, you can also consider me as a sophist. So, sophist is a teacher who charges money. Fine. Means for that person, teaching is a profession. And profession means they are earning money out of it. Fine. So it means teaching is their business. Teaching is their commerce. Fine. So sophists were the professional teachers by profession. They were earning their livelihood through teaching. So a sort of commercial or a business. Now, if I ask you, should teaching be treated as a commerce? Should. Understand this question. Should. Should teaching be a commerce? Should teaching be a business? The answer is no. But is teaching a commerce? Is teaching a business? The answer is yes. I'm again repeating. Should teaching be a commerce? No. Is teaching a commerce? Yes. Fine. So, should means idealism. Is means realism. Okay. Fine. So, what actually happened and what should happen? There is a big gap. Fine. So, sophists were the teachers by profession and they had the skill of teaching. Okay? Now, you have written sophists were the professionals and they were the teachers and they were earning money out of it. Now, I am giving the names of some sophists. The names of some sophists. You can note down, again there will be no question, but somewhere we will use these scholars. Gorgias, okay. So, next name, which is very important, Protagoras. Fine. So, third, we will find some characters in Plato's Republic. So, out of these scholars, understand Gorgias, Protagoras. Thrasymachus we will not understand now. Thrasymachus we will understand when we will do Plato. Fine. So, what I told you about the sophists. Sophists can be considered as first teachers. When I say first teacher means for whom teaching is a profession. So teaching as a profession means you are earning livelihood out of it. And you are treating a teaching as a commerce. Fine? And there will emerge a debate between Socrates and sophists. And Socrates will say, if you make sophists as a teacher, sophists themselves do not know about what is the nature of the profession of the teacher. So I will link sophist and Socrates later, but sophists have also told very useful things And more than Socrates, we see the practical influence of the sophist teaching. Fine. So these are the three sophists: Gorgias, Protagoras. Rest, Thrasymachus and Glaucon, will come when I will do Plato. Okay. Now you write next question. What sophists were teaching? Fine. And second question, sophists were teaching to whom? Who were the students and what they were teaching? So, what a teacher teaches depends on the students. Okay? So, we should also know who were the students of the sophists, and then we will understand what sophists were teaching. Okay? So the first thing, let us understand who were the students of sophists. Okay? So you remember that sophists were professional teachers. Means sophists were charging money for teaching. And you will see that Socrates has a problem with this. So charging money for teaching. I am going slowly so that you write side by side. Sophists were professional teachers charging money for teaching. Now, the thing is, this itself make clear whom sophists were teaching. Sophists will, when the sophist will charge for the money, they will teach those who can pay their fees. And who can pay their fees? Those who are rich. Fine. So sophists are teaching whom? They were teaching those who were rich. Fine. So who were the students of sophists? Those who had capacity to pay to the sophists. It means sophists are teaching to the rich. Okay? Sophists were teaching to the rich. And what is a connection? The connection means because sophists are making the livelihood by their teaching. Fine. So sophists are providing the service and the rich class is their consumer. Now tell me, if I will teach the rich person, will I say earning money is bad? No, because he will get angry and my livelihood is dependent on that. So one very important reform the state will have to take, that is universalization of education, and education has to be sponsored by the state. And without education is sponsored by the state, the right type of education may not be possible. So when we will see Plato will go for recommending that education should be provided by the state. Education should not be in the private hands, and education should not depend upon the paying capacity of the parents or the guardians. Fine. So there is one debate, privatization versus state-sponsored education. Okay. So now again come to the sophists. What constituted the teachings of sophists? So obviously, right, when they are teaching the rich, they are bound to tell that money is a source of good life. And they are bound to encourage their students to earn money. Because if they will say money is a source of evil, all students will run. No one from the rich will come and learn. What will happen to their livelihood? So this is another question which Socrates will raise. Socrates will raise this question that if sophists are teaching the young people that the money is a source of good life, then either they themselves are ignorant, or second, if they know and still they are teaching this, it means they are not able to do justice with their task. Why they are not able to do justice with their task? Because according to Socrates, the task of a teacher is not to tell what the student would like to listen, but what is truth, what is correct, whether a student like it or not. Okay? So I will come to that debate. That time you remember. So sophists were telling that money is a source of good life. So they were not telling the students what they should hear, that honesty is a source of good life. Rather, what a student would love to hear, that money is a source of good life. Okay. Now the next question. If sophists as a teacher are telling to the students that money is a source of good life, obviously they will have to tell how to earn money. Fine? So in your copies you write, sophists telling that money is a source of good life, and they are saying that it doesn't matter you are earning money by fair means or by unfair means, because sophists don't believe anything as right or wrong. They believe that these are all conventions. Nothing is right, nothing is wrong. So when I will discuss the thoughts of Gorgias, I will tell you Gorgias led to the school of thought known as ethical nihilism. So ethical nihilism means nothing is right, nothing is wrong. In whatever things you find happiness, pleasure, do it. Fine. So if money is a source of good life, I should be prepared to earn money. So the next question is, students will ask from the sophist how to become rich. So what is the answer of sophists? The answer of the sophists is, in order to earn money, you come to power. So money and power, these are the two interlinked things. So as a teacher, even I am teaching for what? I am teaching so that you come to power. And what this position will give to you? Lot of money, lot of power, lot of means of happiness or pleasure. Fine. So the best way to earn money is power. If you are in power, you can earn money without efforts also. Fine. So basically, sophists believe that the good life, the means of good life are money and power. Fine. So if you have not written, you can just write that sophists taught that money is a source of good life. Why they say money is a source of good life? Because they are, not because money is really a source of good life, but they are presenting money as a source of good life. Fine. So you take your own position. Do you think money is a source of good life? So when Socrates will come, he will call it is a rhetoric and not the truth. ये झूठ है. It is a story. It is a rhetoric. It is something false presented as something truth. And the best way to earn money is come to power. Easiest way, the fastest way. If you go by the data, you will see that the amount of wealth MPs in India have when they enter the parliament, and by the time they leave the parliament, it grows disproportionately. Somebody having a wealth of 10 crore, in the 5 years, it can become 200 crores. Fine. So, our parliament is a magical body. If you will go to parliament, you automatically become rich. So why not have a system where if you want to eradicate poverty, send every person to the parliament for 5 years rather than only few persons. Please give a thought on it, that Indian Parliament is why so magical? Because the MP, when he enters, his net worth may be 10 crores. But by the time he leaves, his worth becomes 500, 600 crores. You can look at the data. Okay. So the thing is, money and power are two interlinked things. And the best and the easy and the fastest source to come to power is, come to earn money is power. Because otherwise you will set up an industry, it will take time, there is a lot of tension, getting clearance. The best thing is you become a politician. Politics is the best business. Is this clear? So money and power comes in their definition of good life. And money and power are not different, because money is also a sort of power only. It is an economic power. So if you earn power, you will earn money. And if you have money, you will have all means of good life. You will have good bungalow, lot of servants, luxury cars, luxury watches, luxury vacations, a good wife or a good husband, all good life. Okay? So, this teaching can be called as practical wisdom. Fine? So people will call this teaching, money and power, as a source of good life. This is called as practical wisdom. Right? Everybody knows money and power can be a problem, but being practically wise, the practical wisdom is, people say, na, try to be practical. What honesty will give to you? Try to be practical. Practical is earn money, have a good life. So which wisdom are they imparting? The practical wisdom. Okay? Have you written that? For sophists, the source of good life is money and power. So they are giving you wisdom. Which wisdom? The practical wisdom. The practical wisdom says that in this life, be practical. These are the sources of power. Okay. So practical means, what do you mean by practical wisdom? Write it down. So basically, what sophists are imparting, they are imparting the practical wisdom. And I believe that many of you will agree to them, their practical wisdom. And the practical wisdom says that money and power gives you good life. Now, when I say practical wisdom, means in this world in which we are living. Which is that word? The practical word, the real word, the word of matter. It means the world in which we are living is the practical world, the real world, and the word of matter. Okay? So the simple thing is, not money and power, but let us say honesty or good character is a source of life, good life, but only in the world of ideas. So you can write side by side, because again this is not our topic, this is a background of our topic. So sophists are, we also say na, yes, honesty is a good thing, earning money is bad, but in this world, can I sustain, can I have a good life, can I purchase luxury cars if I don't have the money? No, the practical sense is honesty, good character, morality, they have relevance in the world of ideas, in the world of gods. We are not living in the world. Talk about the practical world. In the practical world, you will require money. It's good to hear, but not in practice. So what the sophists are teaching is called as the practical wisdom. Is this point clear? So, can you imagine the world of ideas? Imaginary world, not the real world. In imaginary world, it is honesty and all, but where are the honest people? These are the questions we put to ourselves and justify why are we corrupt. We are corrupt because system is like that. We are corrupt because I have to take care of my family. Endless justifications. And we may be facing the dilemma. And in ethics, what you fear? A dilemma. Because every person has two aspects in the personality. The first aspect is your physical body. The second aspect is your soul. So if you will listen to the soul, soul will say, don't earn money by unfair means. But the demand of your physical body will be what? Earn money for the good life here. And how do you resolve this dilemma? How do you justify such actions? You say that be practical. In this world, you require money for good life. And you will justify to yourself that we are not living in the world of ideas. Okay? So on the world of ideas, I will again come in the chapter of Plato. So in short, sophists are providing what? Practical wisdom. Practical wisdom is saying what? Earn money. Why earn money? Because it is a source of good. It is a source of good life. So the next question is how to earn money. To earn money, the simplest method is to be in power. Okay? Because if you are not in power and if you want to set up an enterprise also, it will take a lot of time. So just now I told you the example of the money and power connection. I told you that our parliament is a magical institution. When the MPs enter, their net worth may be 10 crores. But within 5 years, the 10 crores become 1000 crores. The data says so. So at least what sophists are telling, that power is a source of money. So what a person is supposed to do? The best thing is the person should try to be in power. And I don't think I have to discuss all these things because all of you are preparing for coming to power and authority. So you must be knowing it. Fine? So now the question is, you can write in your copies, the purpose is to lead. If you have a life, then you should lead a good life. Which life is a good life? A happy life. Happiness comes by money, and the money comes by power. You can call it happy, you can call it happiness, you can call it pleasure. Do you agree with this point of view that money is a source of pleasure? So if you have a money, you can go to the market, and there are many things in the market which will give you pleasure. So where is pleasure? According to this doctrine, the pleasure is not inside our soul. Pleasure is in the market. Pleasure in the malls. In the malls, a lot of pleasure is there. And to bring that pleasure home, you need money. And on this concept is based capitalism. So when we will study capitalism, we will again remember, we will again come back to sophism. Is this point clear? So now our question is power and how to come to power. So sophists will give this answer. Fine. Power and how to come to power. And you must also understand that money is also a type of power. Okay. Now, before telling sophist answer how to come to power, I should also tell you where sophism originated and what were the conditions that led to the origin of sophism. Because coming to power and teaching that people should come to power, that's not possible in monarchy, because that works on heredity principle. Power, coming to power, it works only in democracy. Okay, so I don't know, but if somebody is believing money and power is a source of good life, so that person has to come to power. Now, everybody coming to power, not possible if it is a hereditary system, if it is a monarchy. So, this is possible only in democracy. Democracy. So, democracy as a form of government is as old as ancient Greece. Fine. And demo means people, masses. Cracy means government. Okay. So the people coming to power or in government. Now tell me whether you will consider such persons who are running after money and power. Will you consider them as wise or will you consider them as fools? The choice is yours. Okay. So, a person who believes that money and power is a source of good life, you have to decide whether they are wise or they are fools. Fine. And the opposite of wise can be ignorant. So ignorant and fools is one of and the same thing. So if you think it is wise, very good. But if you think they are fools who consider money and power are a source of good life, then from your definition, these ignorant persons rule in democracy. So what is democracy? If I go by Socrates, Socrates will say they are fools. And these fools are in power. Fine. So what is democracy? Democracy is a government of fools. Democracy is a government of ignorance. Fine. And as a result, do you think fools can provide a good governance? No. If you take the case of India, the democracy in India, the biggest problem of Indian democracy is money and muscle power. And when the persons having appetite for money and muscle power are ruling, do you think they can provide a good rule? If you think yes, so you should believe that the type of a governance which India has is an example of a good rule. Okay, so let us not talk about Socrates right now. So from Socrates' definition, democracy will become the government of fools or ignorance, running after money and power. And from Socrates' point of view, if the ruler are ignorant, they cannot provide a good governance. So we'll come to the Socrates argument later. Let us stick to the argument of sophists. And I was telling you where sophist originated. So if you have not written this question, rewrite this question, right? Where sophism originated. Right? Sophism originated in Athens. Athens. Okay. Now write why Sophism originated in Athens. Right? At that point of time, Athens was democracy. So you must be having very wonderful ideas about democracy, empowerment of masses and good governance and whatnot. But in reality, democracy is the government of fools, the rule of money, the rule of muscle. And living in India, nobody needs to explain what a democracy is. Okay? So, Sophism developed where? Sophism developed in Athens. Sophism developed in Athens. The question is, why Sophism developed in Athens? It developed in Athens because there was democracy in Athens. Fine. Now write, what is democracy? What is democracy? And you yourself decide what is democracy. What is democracy? I am giving you two options. Democracy is a form of government which aims at empowerment of masses. And the second definition I am giving is democracy is a form of government where people having the lust for power and money rule. Which definition you believe is more correct, more realistic, and more practical? And since all of us are from India, we can say that this definition is idealistic. Idealistic in the sense it ought to be. This definition is real, practical. Fine. So, this is what democracy ought to be. This is what democracy is. Now, at least you have understood what is, practically speaking, democracy is a rule of money. The best example is US itself. Trump, who is a businessman by profession, coming to power. So, the sophists' position is this. They are realists, they are practical. Socrates' definition will be this, or leave Socrates, idealist definition is this. So, you decide what is democracy. Okay. So, come to the original question. The original question is where Sophism emerged and why. So, Sophism emerged in ancient, Sophism emerged in Athens. Why? It was democracy. Okay? So in democracy, anyone can aspire to be in power. Fine, you need not to be the son of a king. Anyone can aspire to be power. Again, this is very idealistic position, because in India, anyone cannot aspire. You need to have, subject to the condition, in practical sense, if you have money. In practical sense, if you have money, that is democracy. Fine. So now, what sophists were doing? What sophists were doing? Sophists were teaching how to come to power. Why to come to power? That do you know? Because that is a good life. And how to come to power in democracy. So what sophists were teaching? They were teaching how to come to power. And basically, how to come to power in democracy. Fine? So, let us understand it. How to come to power in democracy. I hope you have written this. How to come to power in democracy. So in democracy, everybody knows you can come to power by election. You can come to power through the process of election, and in the election you need popular support. Popular support. You need the support of masses. If masses will vote in favor of you, you will be elected. So to coming to power in democracy, you need the support of masses. Is this clear? To coming to power in democracy, a person needs the support of masses. Fine? So, you should understand how to get the support from masses. Means, you can write how to get support from masses. It means public opinion should be in your favor. It means public opinion should be in your favor. It means you have to sway the public opinion to your side. You have to sway the public opinion to your side. Fine. Now tell me how people vote in India. The exceptions can always be there. But do you think that just because you are a good person, just because you have done lot of good work, people will elect you? No. Nobody knows. You must be knowing how many of our politicians whom we elect and whom we again elect, how much do they work? If you talk about the recent elections or the previous elections, Indira Gandhi was winning again and again because of the work, because of the success in poverty eradication, or because ability to sway the public opinion in their favor. You know that the record of the present government with respect to the employment situation in the country, the economic situation in the country was very bad before 2019 elections. Fine. And even the ruling party was fearful whether they will come back to power. And even they may have thought that they will come back to power. Do you think they would have imagined that they will come back to power with much bigger majority? So what does this show? It shows that it is not important for the people whether you work or you don't work. People will keep on electing you, subject to the condition you know how to influence people. Fine. So why people support? People will support if you know how to influence people. Fine. So, how to impact them? You must know the human psychology and how a person can influence the other person. Fine. How I can influence you? One reason can be the personality. Someone may be very attractive, but that doesn't continue for long. But what influence you is how you speak. How you speak means your skill of oratory. A skill of oratory. You must be knowing that Hitler came to power with the mass support. What skill Hitler had? Oratory. This is the first skill any leader should have. Oratory. Ability to speak with the masses and ability to speak in an influential way that impacts masses. So to be successful in democracy, you require the skill of oratory. Shakespeare, in his play Julius Caesar, he talks of a character, Mark Antony, how Antony, after the death of Caesar, has given the emotional speech because he had a great oratory skills, and how public opinion turned to his favor. If you take the recent example, what is the basic difference between Rahul Gandhi and Modi? The basic problem, Rahul Gandhi cannot come to power because he doesn't know how to speak, what to speak, and that too in an influential manner that too you can forget. Let us not compare Rahul Gandhi with Modi. Let us compare Rahul Gandhi with Smriti Irani. Fine. So he was defeated in his own traditional place by Smriti Irani. Because what is Smriti Irani? She was not an MP, she didn't do anything. Because of the oratory. So, what the sophists were teaching, the sophists were teaching the skill of oratory. If you are a good speaker, if you have a good command on language, if you can speak in a way that influence the masses, you can come to power in democracy. You need not to work. So again, what is skill Prime Minister Modi has? His speech, his ability to influence the mind of the people through his speech, his oratory skills, and the main candidate who is his main opposition leader doesn't have that skills. Fine. So sometimes what we say, oratory in India, we say Modi's jumlas. Have you heard this word? Jumla. If you know to make jumla, if you know to create jumla, and if you communicate jumla, okay, in an effective manner, people will keep on bringing you in power. So jumla is not a bad thing if it is a democracy and if your aim is to come to power. So jumla word, the Indian word jumla, I think even the people from South India or non-Hindi speaking must have heard this word jumla. So this word jumla means rhetoric. Rhetoric. So what a person looking for success means, what a person looking for success in democracy requires. He should be having a skill in the art of rhetoric. Okay? So what is rhetoric? Fine. So I hope you have written that, right? Why people will support? People will support in case we are able, or a person is able to influence the mind of the people. Next, right? How to influence the mind of the people, right? Through the speech, through the use of language, that is through the oratory. Fine. And do you think that if you will speak the truth, people will like? No. People don't like the truth. People will like more when you don't speak the truth. Rather, when you create the noble lies. Fine. So, when people will vote for you, only means when you will talk what people like. What people like. Tell me what people like. Ordinary people, do they like reality? Do they like truth? Or Do they like myths? Myths, stories, or lies? Tell me, the art movies portraying the real situation, they earn more, or the completely mythical stories, multi-starrers, mythical stories based on imagination, they make more money? Which movies have more success? This or this? Nobody will go and watch a boring art movie. You will prefer watching the fantasies. Fine. So, the best thing is people will like the myths. So, Achhe Din was the rhetoric that brought the government to power. Fine. So, it's not that people in India were also naive to believe that really things can change. But they liked to hear Achhe Din. That is an example of rhetoric. So if you can create rhetorics, if you know the oratory, if you know what the audience wants to hear, you can be a successful politician. Fine. So in your copy you write what sophists were teaching. What sophists were teaching? Sophists were teaching the skill to come to power. Skill to come to power means teaching the skill of oratory. The skill of oratory. You are a good speaker, not. You will be attracting the people not when you are telling the truth. Rather, you will attracting the people when you are crafting the story. Fine? Or oratory. So, they were actually teaching the art of rhetorics. Rhetoric is a word very commonly used in politics for the myth. If you can create a story, if you can sell that story, and people like that story and people believe that story, then you will have the chances to come to power. So, what a person needs to learn? Oratory or rhetoric. Fine. So, in one way, if you have to explain who are sophists, you can also explain sophists as the teachers of rhetoric. Fine. So, if we have to explain who were sophists, the answer is sophists are the teachers of rhetoric. So who were sophists? Sophists are the teachers of rhetoric. What is rhetoric? Rhetoric is a skill. A skill is different thing, knowledge is different thing. Fine. So rhetoric is a skill of oratory. Fine. Means you should able to speak in a manner that others can get influenced. Fine. So who were sophists? You can write teachers of rhetoric. Now oratory. Oratory will require two things. First thing is ability to speak and speak in a manner that people get influenced. Ability to speak in the manner to influence people. And you know, majority of the people like myths, stories. Nobody cares for the reality. You don't require it also. In politics, there is no reality. In politics, you create reality. And it may happen that a person whom you are saying, a person who is actually speaking the truth, you will ignore him, you can call him mad. And the person who is speaking the lie, you believe that person because he is speaking something which is influencing your mind. So in case, if we talk about the Rafale deal, so even if Rahul Gandhi says there is some problem and there has been some corruption, but it is not necessary that majority will adhere to or believe because he doesn't have ability of oratory or rhetoric. So in politics, truth does not matter. And truth, you will study somewhere later. Truth is phenomena of power. Of power. Whosoever has a power, what that person speaks is the truth. So truth is a phenomena of power. Later on, we will study one scholar, Foucault. And Foucault will say, truth is a phenomena of power, or knowledge is power. Which knowledge is knowledge? That knowledge is knowledge which is backed by power. So I'll come to this point later. For the time being, just understand that. So it was democracy in Athens. Democracy allowed the emergence of sophism. Sophists were teaching the youth the meaning of good life and the means to obtain the good life. Ultimately, good life depends upon power, and sophists were teaching the art of coming to power. And in a democracy, power comes to the one who has the skill of oratory, and oratory denotes rhetoric or ability to make stories or ability to present any truth, ability to present anything as a truth. So rhetoric means creating the story and ability to present anything as a truth. Fine. So later on, when we will study Socrates, we will also try to understand the difference between rhetoric and dialectics. Fine. So a person needs to speak. भाषण देना आना चाहिए. डेमोक्रेसी में काम का इंपॉर्टेंस नहीं है, आपको बोलना आना चाहिए. फाइन. यू शुड नो हाउ टू स्पीक. सो speak and speak in an influential manner. And you should have the skill to debate. If you see US presidential elections, even a debate takes place among the presidential candidates. Ability to speak in an influential manner. Now, what influences people? The language. Fine. So the human language, the purpose of human language is not just to communicate. The purpose of human language is also to influence. Students ask art of writing answer. So a good answer and a bad answer. The difference is that a good answer is not just a collection of facts. The choice of the words, the choice of the phrases, the choice of jumla, you can say. that also influence the mind of examiner. Why normally we start our essays with quotations? So it is the art of writing. The art of writing will depend upon the command of language. It will again depend upon your ability to write such things, the poetry. At times you see the speakers recite poetry. Speakers recite shairi, because language is not just a medium of communication of the facts. The language is the medium to influence. So you should have good command over language, ability to speak in an influential manner. Same thing, same facts may create a lot of interest. You can make something very interesting which is otherwise seen as quite boring. It is all an art. So there is no science, it is all the art. This is rhetoric. Fine. So success in politics means ability to sway. Success in democracy means ability to sway the public opinion. How will you sway the public opinion? With the help of what you speak. Personality plays a role. You may be a very beautiful person. People may get influenced by that. But the moment you speak, what happens? People will come to know this is Gungi Gudiya, or people will not. So ultimately, what influences the people is the language. Why Shashi Tharoor's writings create so much appreciation, influence, the control on language. Speaking the something, but the manner in which the words you use, the idioms you use, the phrase you use, the stories you use, the poetry you use, all these things normally we see in an essay. So the language. So sophists we are teaching have a command over the language. In the politics, you should have command over the language which people speak. So if you take the example of the present Prime Minister, he may not be very good in speaking in English, but English is a language of elite class. On the other hand, the intellectual class, but he has a command in speaking the language of the masses. Fine. So maybe some elites may support the Congress, but the masses will support the BJP. Why? What is the biggest skill of Prime Minister Modi? The biggest skill is ability to communicate. What he speaks, people like. Even when he says for Corona, you use thali and light the 9 diyas, people will believe it. So that is the skill that is needed, and this is the skill which sophists were teaching, and sophists believed that this can be taught. People can learn this skill. Fine. Next is a skill to debate. A skill to debate means ability to win the debate. You have to develop the ability to establish your point of view, whichever side you take. Whichever side you are asked to take. This again will require the control over your language. Fine. So, ability to debate and establish your viewpoint means win the debate is the skill that is needed. Okay. So, ability to debate from whichever side means ability to prove your point. You have to understand this point also. Ability to debate from whichever side, or ability to prove your point. What does it mean? It means that no position is right or wrong. Anything is right, anything is wrong. It all depends upon your skill to prove it right or wrong. Fine. For example, this is important to understand because later somewhere this will come. Whichever side. So there are two sides of a coin. Sometimes you are this side and sometimes you are this side. You should be able to prove both the sides. Let us take the example. Let us take the example of GST. Fine. So when BJP was in opposition, BJP made it a point to show that GST is bad. But when BJP in power, they could establish GST as something necessary and essential. So what is right and what is wrong does not matter. It all depends upon your ability to debate, your ability to establish. So remember, there is no universal truth. There is nothing universally right or wrong. What is right and what is wrong is all relative. Same thing which is right today may become wrong tomorrow. It is all about how you speak about something. Fine. What is right and what is wrong? No fundamental difference. It is all the figure of speech. It all depends upon how you talk about it. So, right and wrong becomes a speech act. सब स्पीच में है, स्पीच एक्ट है, आपके बोलने पर डिपेंड करता है. So right and wrong is a speech act. It all depends upon how you speak. Fine. And I'm sorry for the non-Hindi speaking bell. I would like to quote one doha. One doha. Doha is a couplet or a sort of a poetry associated with certain saints like Kabir and all. So Kabir said, ऐसी बानी बोलिए मन का आपा खोए औरन को शीतल करे आपम शीतल होए. So let's not take the second part but the first part. ऐसी बानी बोलिए मन का आपा खोए. I am writing it. ऐसी बानी बोलिए मन का आपा खोए. So what does it mean? We should talk in a manner that other person loses his mind. The other person gets mesmerized. And that person comes under control. And this comes not when you will speak the truth or facts, when you speak the stories in the language of poetry, shero, shairi, poetry. This is the art of coming to power in politics, in democracy. This is the skill which sophists were teaching. So, remember this. This is what you will have to do in the interview also. You have to mesmerize the board. It's not necessary that you talk facts, but you should talk in a manner that influence the other. So Gandhi is a fact. Gandhi was assassinated is also a fact. But somebody may talk about Gandhi in a manner that you feel mesmerized the way Einstein talks about it. So this is the skill of answer writing. This is the skill of winning arguments. This is the skill that is needed by those who are in public. And this is not difficult. It can be acquired. It can be acquired by developing the skill and by getting the control
over language. So some people, some students believe that language does not matter, I have written the facts. No, rather facts may not matter, but your language matters, because your success will depend upon your understanding of human psychology. Okay? So, this is what the sophists were teaching. So sophists were teaching how to control, how to develop proficiency or the command over language, and how to win the debate. Winning the debate is very important. How to win debate means whichever side you are, you should have ability to prove your point. Suppose you have to argue that eating tomato is bad for health. You should be able to prove that point. At the next day, if somebody asks, eating tomato is good for health, you should be able to prove that point. Whether eating tomato is good or bad, nobody knows. This is what the sophists are telling, that there is nothing universal. There are no foundational principles. Every knowledge is relative, and hence you can speak from any point of view. India should talk to Pakistan, you should have a logic. India should not talk to Pakistan, you should have a logic. Fine, you should be able to prove it, that's all. Okay? So, for sophists, you can write, there, for sophists, there is no ultimate truth. It all depends on your ability to establish. It means it is all relative. Truth is all relative. So some features of the sophist view we will again study when we will study postmodernism. Remember, value relativism. In philosophy, you will study value relativism. Means there are no foundational values. Fine, everything is relative. Everything depends upon your ability to debate. I should be honest or I should be dishonest. It all depends whether you are able to establish it or not. Fine. So it doesn't matter. So this perspective is called relativism. Fine. So when I was discussing the debate in the Western philosophy, I was telling about one point of debate is foundationalism versus relativism or particularism. So according to foundationalists, there are some fundamental truths. And they will always remain truth. So this philosophy, foundationalism means there are some foundational principles that will always remain truth. For example, Gandhi's view in ahimsa is his foundational principle. Then the relativism, ahimsa or no ahimsa, it all depends on the situation. In some situation, ahimsa is correct. In some situation, you can use violence. So ends justify the means. Fine, practical approach. This is the practical approach. This is a realist approach. This is the practical wisdom. Values are relative. There is nothing good or bad universally. There is nothing good or bad in the foundational sense. Everything is good or bad in relative sense, and it all depends upon your ability to establish it. Fine. So foundationalism versus relativism. Suppose if I say foundationalism and I say foundationalism, or let us say the example, if I believe that GST is essentially good, fine, then my approach is foundational. But if I am in power, so GST is good. If I am out of power, so GST is bad. That is called relativism. If I am in power and I am going for close relation with USA, that is truth. But if I am out of power, I am criticizing the close relations with USA. So that is called as value relativism. Fine. So if the physicists like Thales were foundationalists, fine, sophists are relativists, fine. Things are relative, though there can be some beginning of that sophist thoughts can be in Heraclitus also. Okay, so I hope today you have understood foundationalism and relativism. Okay, so now let me talk about the two prominent sophists and their views. The two prominent sophists and their views. The first is Gorgias. Fine. The first is Gorgias, and Gorgias has given the principle of skeptical nihilism. Gorgias, who has given the principle of skeptical nihilism. Why I am teaching these things? Because when I will teach postmodernism, it will become easy for you to relate. Skeptical means questioning. Skeptical again means questioning. So, skepticism. So, if somebody says that this is the best way of life, question him. Skepticism. The life of an honest person, is it good? Skepticism. Nihilism means not believing any value as foundational. So in your copies you write Gorgias. The philosophy of Gorgias is skeptical nihilism. Skeptical means what? Write it down. Skeptical. Skeptical means doubting or questioning something. If someone tells you something, you question. That is called skepticism. Fine? Write skepticism. Skepticism means question. Now you write what sophists questioned. What sophist questioned. Right? Sophist questioned conventional morality. What sophists questioned first thing is sophists questioned conventional morality. sophist questioned the conventional way of looking at the things. Fine. So, right, sophists, Gorgias promoted what? Skepticism. Skepticism is doubting our beliefs, doubting the conventional morality. Fine. If my belief is it is good to get up early in the morning, doubting it. Fine. And when you are doubting the conventional beliefs, fine, you can be called as radical. So, sophists were called as radicals in context of their time. Sophists questioned conventional morality, and sophists were called as radicals at that point of time. Why? Because they questioned conventional morality. So when we will study Plato, we will study Thrasymachus. Thrasymachus will give his theory of justice. That theory of justice is called as the radical theory of justice, unconventional theory of justice. So in fact, that is a contribution of sophists. Question everything. Question the way we have been living. Question our belief in God. Question our belief in certain values. Okay? Now the next thing is nihilism. Nihilism means not believing in any foundational principles, values, or way of life. Not believing in any foundational principles, values, or way of life. It means nothing is right, nothing is wrong. Right and wrong will depend upon your ability to establish right and wrong. Fine? So, nihilism leads to value relativism. There is no foundational value. It is all right and wrong. Fine? Is this point clear? Right? Why Gorgias held that there is no, why Gorgias held that there is no right way or no wrong way. There is nothing right and nothing wrong because, right, why Gorgias believe that there is nothing right or nothing wrong. There is nothing fundamentally correct or nothing fundamentally wrong. There is nothing fundamentally correct into it earning the money by fair means. There is nothing fundamentally wrong earning the money by unfair means. So what Gorgias held that everything is relative. There is nothing which is fundamentally right and there is nothing which is fundamentally wrong. So you can call it nihilism or value relativism. So neither being honest is wrong nor being dishonest is wrong. Fine. So right, Gorgias held that there is no way to gain the foundational knowledge. Right? He held that man does not have a capacity to understand the foundational knowledge. Man does not have capacity to understand what is truth or what is not ultimately. Fine? So if you compare with Buddha, Buddha went in the search of truth, but Buddha kept silent. You must have heard about silence of Buddha. So on this question, whether God exists or God does not exist, Buddha has kept silence because no human being has a capacity to understand what is God and what is not. what is right and what is wrong. So he says, do whatever you like, whichever value. There is no right way of doing things. There is no wrong way of doing things. Nothing is right and wrong. Even bribery is not wrong. Nothing is wrong. Is this clear? So that is nihilism. Fine. So Gorgias says it is not in our capacity to understand what is right and what is wrong. Fine. So I think that is enough for today to think, to understand. And tomorrow I will discuss Protagoras. And I think finally tomorrow is a day where we will be able to start the Socrates. Till then, thank you.